Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Greg Peterson here, and welcome to the 278th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where 3 days a week we work together educating and inspiring you to become part of your food revolution. Healthy food is something that everybody wants, delicious and nutritious, and right outside your door is even better. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or visit iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. On today's podcast, we have someone who is inspiring creativity in communities everywhere. We're talking to Margaret Aldrich about Little Free Libraries. Margaret is the author of the Little Free Library book through Coffee House Press and has published her own works with The Atlantic, The Huffington Post, Experience Life, and beyond. From Little Free Libraries to tiny homes, integrative medicine to introverted kids, digital detoxing to co-op bookstores, her writing hunts for happiness, community, and what makes humans thrive. As a former editor at Utne Reader and longtime book editor and seasoned news producer, Margaret is now the programming manager at the Little Free Library nonprofit organization and is a regular contributor to Book Riot. She lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota with her husband, 2 entertaining young boys, a little garden, and of course, her own Little Free Library. Welcome to the show today, Margaret.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere on a sheep farm in Iowa.
Wow.
Yeah. And so growing up kind of a little bit isolated, my dad took me to the public library every Saturday. And I was a big book lover from the time I was a kid all the way through now. And that's kind of where it started. So I worked in book publishing for about 12 years, and then I worked as a journalist. And when I first saw a Little Free Library, I thought all my dreams were coming true, free books right on the side of the sidewalk. So I started looking into what is this Little Free Library? And I started writing about Little Free Libraries for different publications, and in 2015 I wrote the Little Free Library book, which was a real joy to research because I got to talk with people who have Little Free Libraries all over the world and how they use them to really build community and get to know their neighbors and share books.
Wow. All right. So for those of us, and I just recently discovered Little Free Libraries, for those of us that don't know what they are, tell us.
So the concept of a Little Free Library is very simple. It is a community book exchange. So it's often a wooden box filled with books that you can find at the side of a sidewalk, in a public park, maybe on a beach. So, and the idea is that if you find a book that you like, you can take it. If you have a book to share, you leave it. So it becomes this kind of self-sustaining system of books.
Wow. Cool. So how long has it been around? Let's start there. I got to know the history of this organization because it sounds so incredible.
Sure. Well, the first Little Free Library was built by a man named Todd Bowl, and he's from Hudson, Wisconsin. So Todd built this library as a memorial to his mom, who was a teacher, an educator. She was a lifelong reader. And when she passed away, Todd wanted to do something to remember her and to kind of, ensure that her spirit was going to live on.
Right.
So he built this Little Free Library book box out of recycled materials that he had on hand and put it in his front yard. And when he saw how his neighbors reacted to it, everybody was curious and excited and would stay to linger and talk around the Little Free Library. He really thought, I have something here and I want to share this with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So since that first one was built in 2009, there are now more than 50,000 Little Free Libraries around the world.
Whoa. Hold on.
Yeah.
2009. Right. That's 8 years ago.
Uh-huh.
That
Exactly.
is truly epic. So my listeners know that I'm always looking for epic. And I have to say, 0 to 50,000 in 8 years is amazingly epic. I'm still getting chills right now. How did
I
that happen?
agree.
How did that
I
happen?
agree. Well, that's something that we talk about a lot at the Little Free Library nonprofit. Little Free Library became a nonprofit in 2012, and we are constantly hearing from people what Little Free Libraries mean to them and what it was about a Little Free Library that they connected with. And, people have different reasons. Sometimes it's because they love books and they want to share books with their community. Sometimes it's because they want to build community where they live and get to know their neighbors. Some of them just want to give back in whatever way they can. But there really is this thread of just connection that runs through it all. And this is true for Little Free Library stewards all around the world. So there are Little Free Libraries in all 50 states here in the U.S., but then there are also Little Free Libraries in 70 different countries around the world.
Wow.
And that's everywhere. I know. It's everywhere from, Iceland to Australia to Uganda to Brazil. Italy is big with Little Free Libraries. You just never know where they're going to pop up.
Wow. Okay, so I'm walking down the street in Coronado Island, California. My sweetheart and I, Heidi, we went on vacation there this last summer, and we're walking down to the beach, and wouldn't you know it, in fact, I have a picture which will be on the podcast page for this of their Little Free Library. And tell people, so I was so excited because I said to Heidi, wow, I'm going to interview her here in the next few weeks. So tell people what it looks like.
Well, the basic Little Free Library, it almost looks like a large birdhouse. It's usually a small house-shaped wooden box. And that's the standard one that you'll see most often, that people use that theme. And you can buy a Little Free Library from the nonprofit organization at littlefreelibrary.org, or you can build one yourself and register it with us. So people who build them get so amazingly creative.
Oh, I'm sure.
I've seen Little Free Libraries that look like robots or rocket ships or Victorian mansions or log cabins, or there's even one that is shaped like a pig and one that's shaped like a cat. I mean, so it really lets people show their creative spirit and put their personality into it.
Yeah, exactly. So plus I'm on your website right now, littlefreelibrary.org, and I'm looking at the featured items. You have some really nice ones that are, here's a Prairie 2-story book exchange box. It's $250. And in looking at this, it could cost me that much in time and energy and supplies to build this. So that's one way to do it, or you can build your own. Get creative.
That's right. Absolutely. Our builders are primarily Amish craftspeople in the upper Midwest.
Wow.
But for some people, part of the joy is really building it themselves. So it really just depends on, where you find your bliss, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would love to think that I would build one, and I actually have the tools and the handicraftness to be able to do it, but I'm so dang busy that I will probably end up buying this Prairie 2-story, because as I shared with you when we started, it's like, I discovered this about 6 months ago, and it's like, wow, we got to have one of those in the front yard of the urban farm.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I did something kind of in between where I bought a kit from Little Free Library and I built the kit. So then I felt like I had used a little bit of my own elbow grease, but it was still very, very easy.
Oh, that could be fun too, to buy a kit. So the kits come with everything I need.
That's right.
Yeah, perfect. So you went from 0 to 50,000 in 8 years. Tell me about that process. And how long have you been with the organization? I guess that's a good first question to ask.
Sure. Well, when I was working on the Little Free Library book, I obviously spent a lot of time with Todd Bull, the founder of Little Free Library, and the rest of the Little Free Library staff. and fell so hard for this organization and their mission and what they were doing. So I was thrilled when they asked me to come on board and join them. Mm-hmm. So I've been with Little Free Library, the nonprofit, for more than a year.
Right.
Something that's really interesting about the Little Free Library movement, and I really do think of it as a movement, it's this very analog thing, right? It's a box full of printed books that you walk up to and you take one, you physically take one out or you physically put one in. So it's this very kind of basic analog process. Mm-hmm. But one of the ways that Little Free Libraries have spread so quickly around the world has been thanks to social media, digital platforms, podcasts like yours, interviews and international media. And so a lot of it is really thanks to those more modern aspects of media.
Yeah.
So because often someone would, say, travel to a spot that has a Little Free Library, and they would take a photo and share that with their social networks, and it would start to spread that way. Yeah. Or I spoke with a man in South Korea who he first heard about Little Free Libraries just from Googling the word library. And
no,
he saw
really?
an image. That's absolutely true. So he saw an image of a Little Free Library, and he thought, oh, what is this? And he started digging deeper into what a Little Free Library was. And he became the first person to start one in South Korea.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really been a mix of word of mouth and lots of different kinds of media that have helped spread the Little Free Library movement. But obviously, too, it's the fact that people all over the world connect with Little Free Libraries and what they do. Those kind of three prongs of, inspiring readers, inspiring a love of reading, and building community and bringing people together, and also that creativity aspect of people who get to express themselves through a Little Free Library book exchange.
Yeah. Wow. So here's what I say, given the amount of energy that I've felt just in our conversation around this idea. It's a really, really good idea. And the fact that it's a really good idea, people have picked up on it and ran with it and said, you know what, I'm going to do this. It's inspiring. It's fun. It's happy,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's simple. It's something that is doable and achievable. It's something that you can do to give back to your community.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about your book. I've actually pulled it up here on Amazon. It's a fun little book. Who published it?
So it was published by Coffee House Press.
Oh, right.
And I was pleased that we got to include tons of color photography. So there are about 400 photos of Little Free Libraries.
Whoa.
Right. And there are profiles of about 50 different people around the world who have Little Free Libraries and what they've meant to them, interesting stories, sometimes really heartbreaking stories, sometimes really funny stories about how their lives have changed because of their Little Free Library. Mm-hmm. And there's also practical information, too, for people who want to get started with their own.
Got it. So I'm super excited over here. I am ready to go to your website and get one of these coming in. What's the process look like? How do I do this?
Sure. Well, if you want to buy a finished Little Free Library, you go to littlefreelibrary.org. There are lots of different styles to choose from. Uh-huh. You can choose a kit, you can choose one that's already put together, and you order it online, and it's a really easy process. And that comes to you with a registration sign already on it. Mm-hmm. And then when you put it up, we want you to take a photo of it. You can be in that photo too. And then put your library on our world map, which is also at the website.
That was going to be my next question. How do we find one?
Well, there is a world map at littlefreelibrary.org. Uh-huh. Not everyone chooses to put their library on the map, right, but many, many, many people do. So when you're out traveling on a vacation, you can go to the world map and see, are there any Little Free Libraries around me? Or if you want to see who's close to where you live, you can hop on there, put in your zip code, and find out about the Little Free Libraries in your area.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So once again, I'm on your website. Where do I find that map? I want to see how many there are in my area.
Mm-hmm. If you go to the home page, one of the colored tabs on the right-hand side is map.
Excuse
so
me.
Just click that.
It would have bit me. It's right there. I'm looking for a tab across the top. How many are in the U.S.?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I don't know the distribution off the top of my head, but the majority are in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because this is really where it started. Most of them were first placed in Minnesota and Wisconsin, since that's where Todd built the first one, was right on the border between the states.
Right.
But right now, California has the most Little Free Libraries of any of the states.
Nice. And as I said earlier, I found one when I was in California. So is there a cost, a yearly cost to do this?
Yeah, there's not a yearly cost. If you build your own, there's just a one-time registration fee. And that's a little under $40.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Super. So tell me, I'm always, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm always looking for epic. And I have to tell you, the epic that you shared with me earlier was one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. But I want to know a story about one of these that just moved you.
Well, there are quite a number of Little Free Libraries that have been built as memorials to people who have died. The very first one was actually a memorial. And so when I hear about people especially who have lost children and then built a Little Free Library to honor that child, those are the ones that really get to me. Those are really great, really heartwarming stories. But every day we hear another story of someone doing something innovative and creative with their Little Free Library. I thought that your audience would be especially interested to hear about all the different ways gardeners and farmers have used Little Free Libraries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a large portion of our audience are gardeners and just people who are really involved in their communities. So one thing that I love that people have been doing is using their Little Free Library not only to share books, but to share seeds. So they'll use their Little Free Library as a seed exchange box. Yeah. So, at the beginning of planting season, people will put out any extra seeds they have that they're not going to use in their own garden. And I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
And that's something I've done in my own Little Free Library is, put a tiny box in there with my seed packets that I'm done with. And it's fun to see other people drop off their seeds, too, that they're not going to use.
Yeah.
So that's an innovative way people have used their Little Free Library boxes. People have built roof gardens on top of their Little Free Library.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, one that I love is just packed with succulents, and it's really beautiful.
Yep.
We've also seen Little Free Libraries show up in community gardens, and I think that's a neat spot for them to live. That's one of the best places
for them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or other people have, even though if their Little Free Libraries at their house by the sidewalk, they've planted herbs or cherry tomatoes right next to the Little Free Library with a little pair of scissors and a sign that says, take some. So people have found lots of other ways to share with their neighborhood and give back in addition to just sharing books.
Yeah. I have to tell you, here's another reason why there are 50,000 of these out here. I am sitting over here and I'm grinning so hard that my smile is hurting. That's how incredibly cool this is.
Yeah. I mean, there really is that feeling of a Little Free Library making you happy.
Happy, yes.
When I'm walking around my neighborhood and I see one, it instantly makes me feel like it's a neighborhood that cares.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to my question, though, that I asked you a minute ago. I want to know one specific library, Little Free Library, that just really moved you.
Well, I can tell you about a boy in Wisconsin who this is kind of a sad story, but also very uplifting. He has a rare form of cancer, so he's had to spend a lot of time at home.
Yeah.
He's had to miss a lot of school. His name is Evan, and Evan found out about Little Free Libraries, and he thought, I'd like to build a Little Free Library for my front yard even if I can't leave the house, I could see people stopping by. And so he built this library with his family and put it out there. And Evan has become one of our dearest friends. He's connected with Little Free Library stewards all over the world.
I'll bet.
So he now has friends all over the United States and all over the planet because there's a special Facebook group for Little Free Library stewards, only for that particular group. So Evan has become kind of this celebrity rock star of the Little Free Library world because
nice.
He has this amazing attitude. You know, he never seems like he's giving up or feeling down. He is always just going and going. So I would say Evan has been the story that has meant the most to me.
Yeah. Cool. So you also have a new project called the Action Book Club.
That's right. We launched the Action Book Club this year, and I'm really excited about it. So the Action Book Club is another very simple idea. Your reading group gets together like they always do. They read a book, they talk about it, but then they take it a step further and they do something positive in their community. So we like to think of it as good reads and good deeds.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it's for any age group. We've had, elementary students form an Action Book Club, read a book, and then do something positive. We've had existing adult book clubs join the Action Book Club, read a book together, and then do something positive. So it's been great to see. One of my favorite stories so far was an Action Book Club in Cleveland. It was a group of third graders, and they read a book about community building, and they talked about it with their teacher, and then they started to think about what could be our action, what's going to be our positive thing that we do where we live. And they discovered that their school did not have a recycling program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I was surprised to hear that. And so they thought, well, this is something that we could start. So they made a goal to start collecting plastic bottles, and they talked with their local recycling center, and they came up with a number that they wanted to collect 15,000 plastic bottles by the end of the year. And they did it. They met this goal. So that's a story I love to hear. But the idea of the Action Book Club is that you can do something big or you can do something small, and all of that is okay. Because the idea is that any act that's doing something positive is going to help create this ripple effect of people doing good things all across the country and all around the world. And right now we have Action Book Clubs that are signed up, across the U.S., but then also in countries like China and Russia and Denmark and India. So we're really excited to hear about the good things people do.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, cool. And where do we find out about Action Book Club?
So Action Book Club, you can also go to littlefreelibrary.org, and there's a tab on the right-hand side. And if you click that, you can sign up and learn more about the Action Book Club.
Cool. Oh, there it is, right underneath map, Action Book Club.
There it is. Yeah,
Cool.
And everybody who signs up gets a nice little welcome package from Little Free Library.
Perfect. So who came up with this idea?
Well, the founder of Little Free Library, Todd Bowl, and I had been thinking about ways to use books to
Create change.
Inspire. Yeah, using books to create change. And so we've seen, the ways that people who have Little Free Libraries or use Little Free Libraries have this instinct to do good in the world. And so we wanted to come up with another way to harness that.
Nice. In reading your bio, you have Utne Reader on there. I haven't heard of Utne Reader in a long time. Tell me about that.
So Utne Reader is a publication and website that really celebrates the best of the alternative press. So, every place from the smallest magazine to maybe a hand-drawn zine to innovative websites, we would read it all and then digest kind of the most interesting and innovative things happening out there.
Wow. So where do we find out about Utne Reader at?
You can find them online, and they still have a print magazine as well. And when I was there, my beat was really about innovative community projects. So I wrote about things like the tiny house movement,
Yeah.
people who were poetry bombing thrift stores, co-op bookstores. There's just a lot of amazing projects that are happening that aren't always covered in the media.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. So that's utne.com, utne.com. Excellent.
That's right.
I saw that. I've known of Utne for a long time, so I saw that on there, and I wanted to ask you about it. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Well, the failure that's at the top of my mind right now, because I'm looking out the window in my backyard, is my garden. And the cause of my failure this year was using a little fence that had a hole in it. And I live here in Minneapolis, where there are lots and lots of critters.
Oh, yes.
Lots of rabbits. And so this year, the rabbits have really won. They left me some things. They left me my Brussels sprouts and my tomatoes and a few other things, but they've conquered my beets and my carrots. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the failure that I'm really thinking of right now.
Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing about that. And I mentioned that this often in my chats with people. This is how we learn. I had a massive tomato failure this year, and I've been growing tomatoes for over 40 years. Started when I was 15, and I know better than what I did, but I did it anyway. So, welcome to being a gardener. This is live and learn, and keep a journal.
Oh, that's good advice.
Yeah, keep a journal. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Well, the thing that's at top of mind for success right now is really the Action Book Club. I'm so excited about how this is going, and I'm so excited to start seeing Action Book Clubs sharing their stories, and so that we can hear about their projects and what they're up to and the change that they're making where they live. So for me, that's been very satisfying, and every day we see more and more Action Book Clubs sign up.
Yeah.
And right before this interview, I group in Tobago and Trinidad. So
oh my gosh.
and it's a classroom, so I'm so excited to hear about what their project is going to be and what book they choose to read.
Yeah. Excellent. So what drives you?
Well, I would say right now at Little Free Library, the things that drive us are really trying to get books and Little Free Libraries to neighborhoods where they're needed most.
Yes.
Because, for a lot of populations and neighborhoods in the United States, people have the means to go out and buy a Little Free Library or build a Little Free Library themselves, which is wonderful. But we also want to make Little Free Libraries and books accessible for everyone of any income level.
Right.
So we have something called the Impact Fund, and that's where we collect donations and we give away no-cost Little Free Libraries every month to people who apply to receive them. So that's really been driving us right now, is we want to ramp up that program even more so we can get books in the hands of folks who need them.
Yeah.
Because really one of the tenets of the Little Free Library movement is that it's a library of inclusion. Everybody is welcome at a Little Free Library. Everyone's welcome to take a book or leave a book. It doesn't matter your age or your gender, your background. So we want to make sure that we're also being inclusive for the people who want to have a Little Free Library.
Yeah. Wow, cool. And I have to giggle about our next question for you. And we giggled about this before we started. But if you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be and why?
That's an impossible question.
Exactly. That's why we're laughing about it.
Well, first I'll say my own book, the Little Free Library book, because, why not? But that's kind of a joke too.
Well, actually, I'm gonna stop you there for a minute. Actually, it's not. And this would be out of 270 episodes or whatever, I would actually say, yay, yeah, you should use your book. And you can give me another book. But give me a little bit about your book.
Okay. Well, the first book I'll recommend is the Little Free Library book, because I think that everybody should know about the Little Free Library movement and how they can get involved.
Yeah.
But I'll also say that my favorite book is always the book that I'm currently reading.
Oh, yes,
because
of course.
I always fall in love with whatever I'm reading at the time.
Yeah.
So that book for me right now is called Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbui. And it's the story of immigrants from West Africa who come to New York and kind of the trials and tribulations and hilarity that ensues for this family.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. And what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
My final piece of advice would be just to think about innovative ways that you can give back to your community. You know, whether that's a Little Free Library, whether that's helping start a community garden, because all of these small acts and small changes really do make a difference. And I'd also love for you to check out Little Free Library's Action Book Club.
Ah, perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Margaret.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Oh, you bet. It's been a good one. Thank you. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
They can go to littlefreelibrary.org, and there's a contact us page. And we're such a tiny staff, it will always get to the right person.
Perfect. Perfect. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/Little Free Library. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Healthy food is something that everybody wants, delicious and nutritious, and right outside your door is even better. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or visit iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.